Hey, what's going on, guys? What's happening? YouTube, good morning, everybody. So, just grabbed my morning coffee, got some time to kill. Figured we'd cover this story. This happened within the past couple days, I believe, and I heard about this story maybe a day or two ago. Controversial Bitcoin blogger and reportedly at one time the largest holder of Bitcoin. I don't know if he's still officially the largest holder of Bitcoin, but probably close to it. Largest holder of Bitcoin drowned down in Costa Rica. A lot of people are speculating that maybe there's some conspiracy behind this. Maybe he faked his own death or something like that. I think probably more than likely he did drown, although it wouldn't be unheard of. We did a story maybe, I don't know, 2 years back about the owner of that Canadian Bitcoin exchange. I don't recall his name off the top of my head. The exchange was something called like Quadranatics or Quadranics or something like that. But he, had in custody tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, of Canadians' bitcoins. Took a trip over to India, and all of a sudden, when he's in India, he allegedly dies. And supposedly, I think he died of complications from colitis. Although his colitis was reportedly prior had been pretty mild and had been under control, so pretty unlikely that he died. India is also a country that is notoriously corrupt. It's a country that that's known for people going there to fake their own death. It's very easy to buy death certificates. So that whole story was kind of suspect. I don't remember what actually came of that story. I almost want to say I recall hearing something that like his girlfriend or somebody was indicted for moving money after the fact or something like that. Although I don't remember the specifics of that story. But people with a lot of crypto wealth definitely have faked their own deaths or attempted to fake their own deaths in the past. But let's take a look at this story. Grab this one from Yahoo News, although you can read about it on all the Bitcoin blogs as well. Controversial Bitcoin blogger Mircea Popescu drowns in Costa Rica. Local news reports that Popescu drowned while swimming at Playa Hermosa, Costa Rica, after going for an early morning swim. And again, a lot of people are have conspiracy theories that this guy faked his death. You can most definitely very easily drown in rip currents and things like that. When I was reading the story, I was just thinking. A couple years ago, I was down in Mexico. We were over. I was dating a girl at the time. We went down to Playa del Carmen. One day we took the ferry over to Cozumel. One of my favorite things if you find yourself in Cozumel. And by the way, I don't know if you guys heard about this news. Mexico recently decriminalized marijuana. Right now they're in, I guess essentially they've legalized marijuana, but they're in kind of this weird limbo where there's not really processes in place or licenses in place for people to grow, cultivate, harvest, sell marijuana. And some areas in the United States have been like this before. I believe Washington, D.C. at one point legalized marijuana, but there was really no laws or rules or regulations in place in terms of how it could be sold. So you could possess it, but you couldn't really like grow it or sell it. So ultimately what it wound up happening is you would have people, and we're talking like right in front of like some of these like Washington monuments and things like that. You would have people with tables set up, and they would sell you a sticker or a T-shirt for $60 or $80, and you get a free bag of weed with it. Now, obviously, you were clearly buying weed, not a sticker, but they couldn't legally sell you marijuana, so they had to sell you a sticker or a T-shirt and then give you a free bag of weed. So it looks like that's kind of the situation that Mexico is currently in. Once they kind of get the infrastructure in place and kind of get things laid out, I think that will be a huge boom for Mexico tourism. And if the U.S. ultimately federally legalizes marijuana, potentially that could be an export product that could ship to the States. We'll see what all winds up happening with that. Kind of in other recent news, I'm getting kind of way off track here, but in other recent news, Clarence Thomas, Supreme Court Justice, recently came out and basically said federal marijuana laws are a shit show, right? Like they're basically willing to turn a blind eye and ignore states that have legal marijuana, even though technically it's federally illegal. Marijuana is on billboards. It's basically a normal legal business in many areas of the country. Yet the federal government kind of has one foot in, one foot out in terms of enforcement. Like marijuana businesses aren't allowed to write off anything because the IRS classifies it as illegal. So we kind of have this like again, just weird kind of one foot in, one foot out of actually enforcing it. Why not just legalize it and treat it like a normal business? But getting back to my Mexico story, so I was down in Mexico, and you hear about all this weed coming up from Mexico, and all the cartels have all this weed, and that's where all the weed comes from is down in Mexico. In my experience, Mexico has the shittiest weed and it's incredibly expensive. I used to travel to Mexico pretty extensively, and every time I went down there, not only is it somewhat difficult to find weed, but all the weed that you find is like dirty brown brick weed, tastes like shit, isn't very good. And one thing that surprised me, whether I remember one time I popped in at a tattoo shop and bought some weed from a guy, another time at a tourist shop, but I think they were trying to charge me like $60 for a gram. And I'm like, you're fucking crazy. And, I thought I would play the game of, okay, I'm just going to walk out. And as I'm walking out the door, the guy's going to be like, haha, just kidding, come back, $15. No, they let me walk right out the door. So I guess there's enough suckers overpaying for shitty weed. And eventually I wound up caving and buying like 2 grams for $60. And it actually was pretty decent weed, although it tasted terrible. But anyhow, we were down in Playa. I would highly recommend doing this if you find yourself down in Playa or Cozumel. We took the ferry over to Cozumel, and you can rent these like old, like really kind of shitty 1968 Volkswagen convertible bugs, and you can just kind of cruise around the island. There's basically one big road that does a huge lap around the island. You can stop at all these kind of little like secret beaches and things like that. There's little beach bars everywhere. It's a lot of fun. Anyhow, I was at a place called Coconut. Some of you guys may have been there. It's this big bar up on the hill. One of my favorite things about that place, after your tequila shots, they give you something called sangrita, which I forget if it's like blood orange juice or if it's tomato juice, but it's basically like uh, a tomato slash orange juice with a bunch of like herbs and seasonings in there, and it acts as a great chaser. Anyhow, we were drinking out there, wound up, I think, starting to chat with another couple, and they were like, hey, we got a case of beer in the trunk and a cooler. You guys want to go swimming or go hit some beaches or whatever. So we're following this couple around the island. We stop at this little deserted beach, and it's super wavy. So me and the guy go out there, and we're body surfing and having fun while our girlfriends are having some beer and just kind of chatting on the beach. And all of a sudden, man, I start getting sucked out by a rip current. Now this is later in the day, maybe like 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, something like that. And I'd been drinking all day. I'd been out in the sun all day. I'm exhausted. And I don't know, maybe you guys have experienced this before, but like I'm kind of like right where my tippy toes can touch, but it's super wavy, and I can feel myself kind of getting sucked out. And so I'm trying to like tippy toe and kind of like push myself back and kind of get back into shore, but I just keep getting taken further and further out. And all of a sudden, waves are crashing over my head, and then I start to get kind of a little bit nervous, right? So your heart starts beating, you start breathing heavier. My head starts going underwater, and I'm trying to pop back up. And the more panic sets in, the more fucked you are. I try to start swimming against the current, which is obviously the exact opposite of what you're supposed to do. And I start screaming for this guy. I'm like, dude. And I don't know what I expected him to do, right? Like, I can't see him. It's not like he's a lifeguard Olympic swimmer. I can't see him like rushing out to rescue me. But thankfully he was there. He starts screaming to me to swim sideways or swim diagonal into the shore. And so I managed to kind of muster up my last bit of energy and started swimming, parallel, or what's that, parallel? Sideways to the beach, a little bit diagonal in towards the beach. And eventually wound up getting out of that rip current or rip tide or whatever they call them, made it back to the beach and collapsed on the sand. And I'd never been so exhausted in my life. And I legitimately was pretty sure I was going to drown and die. So I could definitely see something like this happen. And reportedly, this beach was the one that lifeguards warned people not to swim at for this very reason. But after that long diatribe, getting back into the article, once known as one of the biggest owners of Bitcoin on the planet, billionaire Mircea Popescu has died, according to Costa Rican local news. According to the Judicial Investigation Agency, the OIJ of Costa Rica, a 41-year-old man going by the same name was found dead. The report did say that the deceased was Polish, but he's actually Romanian. While the report did have a discrepancy about his country of origin, the death has been confirmed by a number of sources to whom Popescu was close to. The events occurred around 8:30 a.m. when Popescu entered the sea to swim in Tremonto sector and was swept away by the current and died on the spot, the local report states. The report also states that lifeguards remind tourists that the area is not a beach for swimming. The current can drag you out for miles, and if you swim against it, you will die of exhaustion. Popescu is a figure who will live on in infamy. The polarizing figure in the cryptocurrency industry leaves behind a checkered legacy along with a treasure chest of virtual currency. The Romanian-born Popescu founded Pola Media, an enterprise resource planning firm, in 2007. What he is really known for, however, is his life after beginning to work as a Bitcoin blogger in 2012. This led to him being known as one of the pioneers and early adopters of the digital asset. Since getting in early in cryptocurrency, it was reported that Popescu was at one point one of the largest single holders of Bitcoin with assets in excess of 1 billion. When Bitcoin peaked earlier this year, Popescu's holdings would have been north of 2 billion. Popescu is also known for being behind MPEX, a Bitcoin securities exchange he started back in 2012. It became a hub for Bitcoin IPOs and brought him a lot of negative attention from the SEC, among others. He went on to loudly criticize Ripple and Bitcoin Savings and Trust because he viewed them as scams. The latter turned out to be right, but his behavior as much as his views made him so well known in the industry. Popescu was loud, brash, and unapologetic as one can be. It became his signature and grew him a large fan base despite documented cases of sexism and racism. One such example would be the essays revolved around what a woman's job should be in the world in which we live. One of those few jobs he believed would be to write a man's eulogy. Oddly enough, the 3 confirmed sources linked above were women he knew well and their separate posts eulogizing Popescu. So far, no word on where his massive crypto assets will wind up, and nobody knows any of his descendants or the state of his current digital holdings. So it looks like that's the end of the article. And that's kind of one interesting thing I neglected to mention when we talked about the Canadian Bitcoin exchange owner who, allegedly died, more than likely faked his own death. Mysteriously, he was the only one at that cryptocurrency exchange who held the private keys and could access the Bitcoin. Can you imagine that? Like a giant crypto exchange with millions of Canadians' money in there, tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, and only one person in the company can access that money. So, when he quote unquote dies, all of a sudden that money is lost until, years down the road when he, I guess, feels safe enough to move it and we see some activity on that wallet. But thought this was an interesting article. Thought we would share it with you guys. Would love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment down below. If you guys enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button below. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next video.